Hi everybody, and welcome back to the Renaissance Builder. So, we built a thing. It's called a camera slider. I wanted to do this because I thought it was interesting. I've seen a couple videos on building these things, and I thought it would be possibly beneficial to the channel, making more I can't talk. Better videos. Anyhow, it's not all that complicated. It basically gives a platform for you to mount the camera on and then be able to slide it. So, kind of like that. Now I went ahead and took the extra measure of also adding a pivot so that instead of just a one-dimensional image sliding across your screen, you can actually follow the subject. I guess you would call it a pan feature, as in pan tilt, just not tilting. All the hardware is basically 1/4 bolts. These are 1/4 stainless steel bolts. These are 1/4 brass bolts. I went with 1/4 because, well, I had the tap for 1/4. Also, it turns out the bolt or the nut pattern on the bottom of most camera equipment is 1/4. So that worked out nicely. All I had to do was stick a bolt up through and accomplish that. A couple of the features. For one, this can be disassembled. So sticking it in a closet or packing it up is not really that difficult. You just take these here wing nuts off and the plates separate so that you have the copper frame and the feet separately. So I also have a feature on here that serves to do an angle or on a degree, pan on a degree. So let's say you want to go higher on here, you can adjust a bolt and actually level off your camera so that you're going from higher to lower. That's done just by adjusting this here bolt down. So you can adjust that angle. Honestly, mostly you're just going to keep it flat. A couple things I wanted to talk about doing this. You guys saw the building montage, and this thing can be built mostly with scraps. Literally, I have a hinge here from a gate, like an outdoor gate. So you go to Lowe's, you get yourself a couple items. The main thing here is some oak wood, some hardware, 1/4 hardware, obviously random. I used brass because I thought it would look nice, but some 1/4 hardware, mainly bolts, nuts, and the wing nuts are just nice to have. A hinge for an outdoor gate, that's all that is. And this here piece is actually a roller for like doors that go on rails, so you can buy the kit. And I just literally just took the kit and drilled a couple holes and mounted the bolt up in there so that you've got that feature. A couple things I wanted to mention doing this. Whilst this whole project worked out nicely, one of the things that if you're going to build this yourself, I feel like I should mention so that you can at least keep in mind. These rails, I polished up the copper and then I painted an enamel on top of the copper to make sure it stayed polished. I kind of wish I wouldn't have done that. Now I have to go back and repolish because that enamel added an uneven layer to the copper, which as I roll the wheels across adds a little vibration to the image. Like, especially when I have, you know, the gimbal sticking up here, that's a lot of room to wiggle. In other words, it's not as smooth as it could be, so I'm actually going to have to take this apart and repolish the copper to make it smoother. It's snazzy, it works, it's not motorized because, well, this took me long enough to build as it is. I may stick a motor on it eventually, but for now, we're just going to do our images by hand. So if you guys like this, feel free to make it yourself. I had fun doing it, it was a lot of fun. You know, you end up with a completed project that you can actually enjoy or show off and be like, hey, I did this. And it cost under $100 to make all this. To buy the wood, to buy the copper, to buy the hardware, it's not all that expensive. Now that being said, this isn't a professional rig. If you guys are looking to do professional photography, then you're probably going to want to get a professional slider. As it is, I'm using my camera to film all these episodes, and I'm using a cut down version of of Premiere Elements to do the editing. So I'm not exactly professional, so this will get the job done. One other thing I'd like to add for futurizing this thing, I was thinking about getting a couple like super cheap monopods and screwing the monopods into the corners of the feet. That way I could actually set this thing up and it stands on its own wherever I want to put it. Also, the plate here in the center, I can anchor to a tripod. Like if I get a heavy-duty tripod, I can actually anchor this plate to that tripod, and then again, it stands on its own. So there's flexible options to this thing to be able to use it. So, it was fun. It's not hard to do. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this one. It was fun for me. Go ahead and hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you hit that bell icon for future videos. And I now have a Patreon page. If you guys are ever interested in helping to support the channel, because some of this stuff gets expensive and it's all coming out of my pocket. So feel free to head on over to Patreon, look up The Renaissance Builder, and be a patron. I know I certainly would appreciate it. I know my wife would definitely appreciate it. Or at least she'd appreciate me not spending all our money on this. Thank you very much, everybody. And as always, you guys have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Boop. 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 Boop.